Hey, welcome to another episode in the Climate Action Homes series on electrifying everything. This upcoming session is an interview with DR Richardson. He's one of the co-founders of Elephant Energy, and they help homeowners in Colorado and Massachusetts eliminate all of their fossil fuel burning appliances in their home. And so, when you couple that with going solar, like these homes behind me have done, then you can eliminate your carbon footprint and create the world that we want, where we don't have carbon emissions that are creating these crazy high temperatures like we have right now, which are expected to only get worse in the future years. So the sooner we can go carbon free, the better. So tune in for my episode now. And if there's anything that I can do to help you go solar or improve your carbon footprint, reach out. All right, here we go. Howdy, and welcome to another episode of Climate Action Homes. So happy to have you here. And I'm really excited because today we're going to be talking with DR Richardson. He's one of the founders of Elephant Energy. We did a little intro to Elephant Energy on the previous episode with Jillian, where she took us through some of the details. This is going to be a nice complement to how did this company get started? An important question I forgot to ask: why is it named Elephant? And how can you take the biggest climate actions possible and not get overwhelmed with the details, the financing, and just do it, make it happen, and inspire others in your community so that we can really get this transformation off the ground? So thank you so much, DR, for joining us today.
Happy to be here, Joan. Thanks so much for having me.
Yeah, this is awesome. So DR, before we dive into some of what Elephant Energy does, I would love to hear a little bit of the backstory, the quick sketch of that. Yeah, why the heck is it called Elephant Energy? And what's the mission and vision? And how did you get to this point?
Yeah, no, thank you so much. So my background is that I spent about 10 years helping build a private equity firm here in Boulder, Colorado called Vision Ridge Partners. It was an amazing place to spend a decade. I got to work across solar, electric vehicle charging, electric school buses, utility transformation, just got to work with some awesome entrepreneurs. And after doing that for about a decade, I realized two things. One is that I really wanted to be building my own company. It's great to work with other people and invest in them, but I wanted to do it myself. And the second thing is some things can really move the needle, and some things, while helpful, may not move the needle as much. And I really wanted to be focused on things that move the needle. So we started Elephant Energy with the idea of how do we make it really easy to move the needle as much as possible from a homeowner's perspective. What we realized is I'm a relatively simple person, so I'm going to talk in simple frameworks. But again, in the framework of some things matter and some things don't, really 80% of what we have to do over the next 10 years is we have to deploy more wind and solar. We have to manage the volatility of wind and solar. We have to electrify vehicles, and we have to electrify buildings. If we do those four things, we have a pretty good shot at avoiding the worst impacts of climate change. If you don't do those four things, all the other things that people are doing and investing in, they just don't matter as much because they can't move the needle as much. So green hydrogen, carbon capture, these things are really important for solving the most hard to abate industries, but they just don't move the needle that much in the next 10 years. And so over the next 10 years, right, if you look across those four things, we are deploying a bunch of wind and solar. We're deploying a bunch of batteries to manage the volatility. We are electrifying vehicles, and we are not yet electrifying buildings at the pace at which we need to. So my business partner, Josh Lake, and myself looked around and said, okay, how do we create a business that's going to help electrify buildings as much as possible and really make it easy for homeowners to, when the time comes, electrify their homes? And the name came about because we looked across all the other companies thinking about electrification, and HVAC and air conditioning and heating companies are the ones that may be well positioned to help a homeowner electrify their home. And they all have names: Bob's Heating and Air, Jones Heating and Air, names like that represent a nice family business. But at the end of the day, we wanted to create something different. We wanted a name and a brand and a reputation that would really stick out in customers' minds that this is a different experience than your traditional HVAC company. And so we said climate change is the elephant in the room. That's a great launching pad for a name. Let's call it Elephant Energy. So we got started about 2 years ago here in Colorado, electrifying homes with the name of Elephant Energy.
Okay, that is so good, because I was like, maybe it's that elephant, the story of there's like the blindfolded people that are always all touching, and they're like, oh, it's a rope, it's a hose. But I mean, that could also be part of it where
For sure.
nobody's really looking at the whole picture.
Yep.
But I like the elephant in the room analogy as well. What's your focus today? What markets are you in? Give us kind of the snapshot of what's happening right now.
We want to sit at the sort of center of enabling climate-friendly homes. And there's 3 rules to a climate-friendly home, right? There's don't burn fossil fuels in your home. Rule number 2 is don't use energy that burns fossil fuels in your home. And the third is be as efficient as you can. Don't waste energy. And so we're really focused on number 1 right now. Don't burn fossil fuels in your home. So what we do is we started here in Boulder, Denver, Colorado. We try to make it really easy for homeowners to electrify their home. We install heat pumps, heat pump water heaters. We do induction wiring. We do EV chargers. We do insulation and weatherization, all with the idea of let's help you upgrade your home, make it way more energy efficient, get that tailpipe out of your home and power and upgrade your home with electric technology, and make it, while doing so, make it more comfortable, lower your utility bills, and lower your carbon emissions from your home. We've had really good success here in the Boulder, Denver area. We recently expanded to Massachusetts. We're primarily in the Boston area in Massachusetts and looking to expand from there.
When you're choosing those markets, DR, is it based on some of the local incentives or the electric prices or kind of the culture, or how do you decide where to focus?
Yeah, no, great question. And so when I talk about making it really easy to electrify your home, there's a couple of components that are really challenging for most homeowners, and candidly, most other HVAC contractors. The first thing is rebates and incentives. Here in Colorado, let's say you're in Boulder, the city of Boulder. There's a rebate from the city of Boulder. There's a rebate from Boulder County. There's a rebate from the utility, Excel. There's a state tax credit. There's a federal tax credit. There's just a huge amount of incentives, but you have to choose the right equipment to make sure that you qualify for all those incentives. If you're in Denver, it's a different set of incentives. There's incentives from Denver. There's incentives from Excel, federal and state incentives as well. But it's really complicated to navigate all these different rebate programs. So part of what we are trying to do is make it really simple for homeowners to figure out what equipment is going to maximize and optimize the rebates based on equipment selection. The second thing that we do is we specialize in cold climate technology because cold climates are especially difficult to solve for. If you're in a place like Virginia, a heat pump's not that hard because the technology doesn't have to provide that much heat on really cold days. Guess what? It gets really cold in Colorado, as you know. This past winter, we had nights when it was negative 13 degrees Fahrenheit. And that's really difficult for a heat pump. You have to size things appropriately. So you need to make sure that it's going to work, but you also don't want to oversize it too much. So we bring a lot of building science to the conversation to make sure that we're sizing a heat pump appropriately for a customer's home. We do a number of other things to try to make it really simple, including contractor vetting, permit pulling, and a little bit of a different customer journey overall. But when we looked around and we said, what are the other places that we want to be besides Colorado? Boston came up as a pretty natural option. It's old, it's cold. So that building science that we specialize in is valuable and a little bit of a differentiator versus how other HVAC providers might be scoping or designing or installing systems. And then there's a really great rebate in Massachusetts. There's a $10,000 rebate if you fully electrify your home. To qualify for that $10,000 though, however, you need to first do an energy audit. Second, you need to do some weatherization work. And then once you've done those first two things, you need to do the heat pump. And so that complex customer journey, coupled with a large rebate, was something that we felt would really fit in well with our model, in addition to the cold temperatures, because we could provide a very simple customer journey for those homeowners by being basically a service provider every step along the way.
I've never really thought of Massachusetts as old and cold, but yeah, I could definitely see that. That's cool too, that it forces the assessment, weatherization, electrification, that pathway, because yeah, I know it's when you're working with individuals, which I can say from solar too, that we have people that want solar, and I'm like, why the heck is your bill so high? Do you realize, that it's way out of the norm? And, some people do, but if you've moved from another area, you may not. And in some cases, one case that I recently looked at, it is because of a heat pump that was put in, and this is in the Denver metro area. It was put in, I don't know, 5 or 10 years ago, but it didn't go with cold climate. And so it's pretty inefficient.
Right.
And then it switches over to gas, which is really expensive. I see a recurring theme too in how you guys do things, is that you're it's the opposite of a troublemaker. You're like, okay, what's the hardest problem here? And it's, electrifying buildings. And then again, what is the hardest problem is cold climate heat pumps. But with everything, it's either a problem or it's an opportunity. So when others are just like, forget it, I'll go to somewhere warmer and just work there, that does leave a gap. So
that's exactly right. That's exactly right. And, I think one of the things that we are trying to do is create that one-stop shop where we can be that trusted partner for homeowners against what is a pretty complex set of upgrades for most homeowners. So appreciate that you're recognizing that. We spend a lot of time trying to make it as easy as possible for homeowners to install a heat pump, upgrade their home.
As far as elephants in the room, that's probably a big perception, or maybe reality in some cases, is that just the overall cost of doing all these projects. And in addition, the cost to your company, if it is this drawn out process. So could you talk a little bit about that, as far as how do you manage that whole extended lifetime of, this isn't a one and done. I can see where HVAC people would just say, okay, it's January 3rd, your furnace went out, here's a new furnace, bye, and just move on. So how do you manage the cost issue for both the homeowners as well as for your company?
Part of what we're trying to do, again, is by being a trusted partner, how do we be as transparent and as educational as possible with our homeowners, with our customers, to help guide them along in making the right decision? One of the things that we've done is we've created an electrification roadmap. It's on our website. It's been a really fun product to get to build, because we're trying to systematize all the knowledge that we have and just make it available for free. We get customers all the time that ask us, okay, I want to decarbonize my home. Where do I start? And this roadmap is really trying to make it really simple for homeowners, without our involvement really at all, to figure out what should I electrify first, and what is the process, and what's the path, and what's the budget, and how should I think about sequencing these things? Because you're right, it's very complicated. And part of what we think we can do is hopefully make it a little bit simpler for people. It starts on our website with that product. Then once we have customers who are ready to pull the trigger, want to engage that next level and say, okay, I think I'm ready to engage and to learn more and figure out what I should do next. We do an audit of their home and of their systems. How old is your furnace? How old is your AC? How old is your water heater as the main appliances, and take stock of those and others. And the reality is it rarely makes financial sense to proactively, and let me define proactively as years ahead of time, proactively retire a furnace as an example. If you have a 3-year-old furnace, if you have a 5-year-old furnace, it just doesn't make financial sense most of the time to replace that with a heat pump. Now, what it does make sense to replace with a heat pump is if you say, I have a 15-year-old furnace, that's at the end of its life. Maybe you could get a couple more years out of it. Maybe you can't. But what you don't want to happen is you don't want it to be Christmas Eve, your in-laws in town, and have that furnace fail. We've had those phone calls before, and it's really tough. That's typically when other people have perhaps made suboptimal decisions. The actual contractors don't necessarily want to be working over the holidays. I know I try to take time for family during those times. And so you're going to get a suboptimal outcome because you're rushing to make a decision. If you had to go buy a car, there's two pieces about buying a car. One is people almost never drive their car until it's literally going to break down on the side of the freeway. But yet that's how we treat a lot of our appliances. And if you are stuck in where your car literally breaks down on the side of the freeway, you don't have many good options. You can't just walk home. Typically you can't just get the car replaced for very cheap. Instead, you're in a tricky situation where you have to go purchase something that you weren't ready to purchase. You haven't thought about it. You're just desperate. And it's the exact same thing with your furnace and your water heater. Part of what we're trying to do is educate consumers around this is the expected lifetime of the equipment. When it's ready to be replaced, the best thing you can do is do your research ahead of time, get ready to replace it, and proactively pull that trigger such that you aren't stuck in that emergency replacement scenario. Then what we're trying to do, as I mentioned before, is really optimize the financial picture for homeowners. Talk them through how much money are you going to save on a yearly basis by replacing your gas-fueled equipment with an electric technology. The good news is most homeowners are going to save hundreds of dollars per year, if not more. Gas prices keep going up. Electricity is a little bit more stable. What is that ROI for homeowners? And then really walk them through the math of what does it cost to install a heat pump today? What does it cost to replace a furnace and an AC today? And the reality is it often costs the same or even less to replace a furnace and AC with a heat pump versus replacing it with the exact same technology. Between the rebates and between the financial payback of the ROI, the heat pump is going to be the lower cost choice for your wallet. So trying to make that very clear and very simple for our customers and for our homeowners. And then the last part is there's still an upfront payment, right? This doesn't pay for itself on day one. So how do we make financing it really easy for homeowners? We thought a lot about raising our own funds to streamline and provide debt directly to our homeowners. The reality is there's so many green banks out there right now. They can provide this funding at a way lower cost than we would ever be able to. So we partner here in Colorado with RENU, which is Colorado's green bank. It's RENU. They've partnered with a couple of credit unions to make the adoption of clean energy technology really simple and really low cost. In Massachusetts, we're partnered with MassSave to provide our customers heat loans. Those heat loans are very well priced. I think it's 0% for 7 years when it's used for electrification upgrades. So it's very easy to use those existing financing sources, and we try to partner with them closely to make sure that it's a seamless process for homeowners. Hopefully what you've heard there is that every step of the way can be complicated, and we're trying to make it a little bit less complicated, a little bit more streamlined.
Yeah, I'm sure that feels really good for folks to know that somebody else is going to figure it out because all those rebates, the financing, that is super cool about the Green Bank in Massachusetts having that 0% for a while there. Do have an interview with Jared Dreyer of Westera about the RENU program. If people are listening and interested, that would be definitely a good one to check out.
Great.
So what are some of the other concerns that, I don't know if it's like myths, obstacles, things that might have somebody sitting on the fence right now and they haven't really looked into it yet. And then you see once people get into it, they're like, oh, I didn't know that we could do it this way.
One of the more common questions that we get from homeowners is, hey, that's nice that you're quoting me on a fully electric system. I have an HVAC contractor that I've worked with many times in the past, and he's quoted me a dual fuel system or a gas only system, and because he says that heat pumps don't work in the cold. Part of what we have been doing is we've been collecting a lot of real-time data about our system performance. We deploy a product called a Smart AC. It's a company out of Texas. They're fantastic. We install one of those for free with every install that we do. That gives us real-time heating and cooling information about a customer's system. So we can say, hey, it's December, I think it was 19th when we had that cold snap here in Colorado. Let's take a look at our fleet of heat pumps. Let's see, is every heat pump producing enough heat to keep this house warm? And the wild thing is they were. We have felt really good about the building science that we've been bringing, coupled with that real-time data to demonstrate that these heat pumps really do work in cold climates. So we are able to confidently go to the homeowners and say, your HVAC contractor was probably right 10 years ago. Those heat pumps did not work. Most of them were not cold climate, if any of them. Technology has improved a bit, especially with the release of cold climate heat pumps. We use primarily Mitsubishi's. They have some of the best cold weather performance out there. And we can show with real-time data that these heat pumps really do work on those absolute coldest days. One is just the industry is still taking some time to catch up to the fact that cold climate heat pumps are they're the future. I'll leave it at that. And then the second thing is, we often get questions about the elephant model. Aren't you a middleman? Isn't that going to mean that my total cost is going to be higher with you? And what we find is that it's actually the opposite. We do two things that usually mean our pricing is lower than most other quotes out there. The first is we are doing that rebate optimization. So as I mentioned before, we have a set of software on our system that is taking a building system design and optimizing what actual equipment should we be speccing to maximize the amount of rebates that we can be getting for a homeowner. The second thing that we're doing is working closely with our network of vetted contractors to provide volume discounts, both on the contractor side and the equipment side. So we have relationships with Mitsubishi and we have relationships with all of our local vetted contractors to where we provide them with a guaranteed volume of work. And in exchange, they give us discounts on the pricing side of things. And in that way, we're really able to build strong relationships with equipment OEMs and with local contractors where we can vet them, we can train them, we can make sure that they're going to do a very high quality work, and we can get great pricing out of providing that reliable income to them as tradespeople. Overall, the financial incentives plus the what I'll call menu pricing or bulk discounts on our end enable us to deliver the same outcome or better at the same or lower price for homeowners. It seems like it shouldn't be possible, but we've been having some good success figuring it out.
Yeah, that makes sense. And especially because people that I've talked to that have looked into heat pumps, the pricing is so wildly different that they really lose faith. They're like, wait a second. They're like off by a factor of 2.5. Right. Is that cheaper one? Is that better? Or is the other one ripping me off? And I think because it's not a number that anybody's familiar, at least in these cold climates where we've always done furnace only, or maybe furnace and AC, that there's nothing to really compare it to in your history. So you just, oh man, I have no idea. Let me stop. Right. One of the other questions that I have is, there's still some rebates that are coming in the Inflation Reduction Act at the state level, as far as I understand it. And, some people are like, oh, I think I'll just hold off because that might be coming through too. What's your recommendation on that, or how does that actually impact people's decisions or the finances?
Here's my understanding, which is that the Federal Inflation Reduction Act is awesome. It's the largest investment we've made as a nation in climate infrastructure, which is incredible. It's awesome to have that federal support. The IRA comes with a number of different provisions. Specific to heat pumps, there's two things that are important. The first is a set of tax credits that are available today for homeowners who do have taxable income. You install a heat pump or a heat pump water heater today, you do qualify for up to $2,000 of federal tax breaks. The second thing is there are direct cash rebates. Those direct cash rebates are focused on two different types of homeowners and systems. The first is a low income rebate for LMI eligible homeowners. There will be $4,000 to $8,000 of rebates available for electrifying homes at some point in the future. I'll come back to that. The second thing is there's a non-income driven set of rebates that are more focused on system performance and efficiency. So if you substantially improve the efficiency and the performance of your home, you're eligible for $4,000 to $8,000, I think, of direct cash rebates. Here's the issue, though. The federal rules have not yet been written on the IRA for those direct cash rebates. And the federal program is going to be administered through the states. So the federal groups have to write the rules, and then the states have to write the rules. So it's this complex dance that the federal government and then the states are working through as we speak. The timeline keeps slipping. So it was going to be available this summer. Then it was going to be this fall. The latest I've heard now is Q1 of next year. If you can wait, if you don't have a system that's on the fritz or very old, it definitely makes financial sense to wait. You just might have to be really patient because I don't know when that money is going to be available. The second thing is, as we've seen with a lot of other programs, there can be a little bit of a gold rush. And by gold rush by consumers to get into the program, to get equipment and to get that installed. So if you're holding out for the rebates and it's a little touch and go on your system, you might have a really long wait for those rebates. There might be equipment supply chain issues. There might be contractor availability issues. It's a very specific set of decisions to each homeowner and to their home. I definitely think it makes sense to wait if you can afford to. Pricing may go up. Equipment may not be available. Contractors may not be available. So if you are worried about any of those things being true, it may not make sense to wait, and you should do the upgrade sooner. So again, it's pretty specific to each home. The best that we can do at Elephant is educate our customers on the issues and the trade-offs and let them make the best decision that they can for their home.
Okay, that makes sense. And so when you're talking about those federal rebates, so those could be pushed off, who knows how long. Yeah, and that does make sense too. I know like the solar industry has had that at different times as far as supply chain drying up or a tariff, something like that really out of nowhere throws a loop into the system.
So that's exactly right.
The other thing is when people are saying, okay, I will replace this with a heat pump when my either furnace or AC dies, are there other things that generally need to be done to the system? How much of it is just a swap out, and how much other work needs to be done regarding maybe ductwork or other pieces?
For better or for worse, every home, even if they were built as part of a group of homes, they've been augmented over time. And that makes most homes semi-custom at this point. So the things that were directly applicable to your neighbor may or may not be directly applicable to you and your home. What we do is we specialize in cold climate heat pumps. As I mentioned, we do heat pump water heaters, we do induction, EV charging, insulation weatherization as well. So as part of our process, we're trying to identify what's going to provide the most value to a homeowner in the near term. Maybe it's doing that heat pump today. Maybe it's doing a water heater today and doing the heat pump next year. But really helping homeowners think through what's the age of their various assets, what's the expected value and expected timeline for those assets, and how can we be helpful in mapping out that plan for what you need to do. On the building science side of things, we have hundreds of homes in our database in terms of how much energy they use. We have that by single family homes. We have that for multifamily homes, townhomes, condos. And so we're able to actually get a pretty good sense for, at a very granular level, hey, you homeowner, compared with other homes in Denver, you might be using 30% more energy than a comparable home of its size. We could do a heat pump for you, but you're going to be spending a lot of energy heating up your neighbors and heating up the trees and the plants around your house. Maybe that's not the best use of your money right now. Maybe instead we should do some insulation and weatherization work. When we have that data to be able to help guide homeowners onto what's going to provide the highest value and highest ROI to their specific work. With regards to airflow, the more I learn, the more complex I realize it is. Airflow is just so important to a healthy, climatized home. We try to be very transparent with homeowners around a heat pump, without messing with their ductwork at all, is going to provide XYZ benefits. In some homes, there are some changes that we can make to the ductwork. Sometimes those changes will be helpful. So we try to walk people through, here's your options. You can just do the heat pump. You could do a heat pump with a couple ductwork upgrades, and help them understand the various trade-offs of why might that be a helpful ROI investment for my home. We, at the end of the day, are trying to make it as simple as possible. If your home worked on a furnace and AC previously, most likely we'll work with a heat pump. There's a couple of situations where it doesn't work. A heat pump may not work perfectly, but just try to provide that education, that information for homeowners to understand what is living with a heat pump going to be like different than my previous setup.
Look at this super cute heat pump behind me here. This heat pump is doing the heating, the cooling for this home, and it's all being powered by the solar panels on the roof. The sooner we can get those fossil fuel burning appliances out of our homes, the sooner we can start turning this around and improving the future for ourselves, for our kids, our grandkids, future generations. So if you've been thinking about going solar, thinking about electrifying your home, don't wait. Let's do it now.
Yeah. And I just was remembering something that when you were talking about kind of your volume, your bulk discount approach, one thing that people can do, at least with the Denver program, is there's a list of all the different contractors and who has applied for these different rebates. And like for heat pump water heaters, I think that Elephant is one of the highest in there as far as having done that number of helping people do heat pump water heaters, which is something that a lot of folks, it falls between plumber and HVAC. And so I think that's one of the indicators of here's somebody that actually knows. There's a few other companies on there as well. And then the other thing I wanted to mention, and there's an episode that is another Electrify Everything where we had Reed Borton with Colorado Premier HVAC. Just looking at the sequencing. So for Denver, if you have a heat pump in and then go solar, you can get a $4,000 rebate for your solar, in certain situations. There's a lot of asterisks there. Yeah. But, interesting thing is that you could put a heat pump water heater in to then qualify for some of those things. So maybe if you're not ready to do a full whole house AC heating heat pump, there might be some other options. Just like with everything, I would recommend anybody who's listening, don't make decisions beforehand without going through this process and talking with someone like Elephant Energy to see there might be some entryways that are the slope is a little more gradual than you might be guessing.
That's exactly right. You don't have to electrify everything everywhere all at once, but we do have to electrify everything. And so how do we create that roadmap with homeowners to be doing that over time? And how do you take advantage of the various incentives and rebates as they're out today? There will be more in the future. There may be less in the future. We don't know. So how do you take all those various pieces into consideration with respect to optimizing the electrification of your home?
Yeah. And the last thing I want to throw out is a counter argument to doing it slowly is I did a tour with somebody here in Denver that had electrified their entire home right after they bought it.
Yeah.
And then went to work for one of the electrification consultants because they're like, this is cool.
Right.
What do you think about that? As far as I always thought when I was doing real estate that, when you're doing a big transaction that's hundreds of thousands of dollars, if you can tack on 30,000 or whatever it's going to be at that point, buyer or seller, that could be a really cool time to just get that home future-proofed. Do you see anybody doing that? Or what are your thoughts about that kind of all at once and maybe in the process of the real estate transaction?
I love it as part of the real estate transaction. If you can work with the sellers to electrify everything and roll that into your mortgage, that's going to be the absolute lowest cost way to electrify everything. The flip side of that is, if you have to pay for it yourself, it is expensive. Some people definitely have that money lying around. A lot of people don't. And for us, again, I think it's really important to be thoughtful about your home with respect to the budget and your own personal cash flow availability. You want to make sure that you're planning ahead such that you're not caught flat-footed into having to replace your water heater when your in-laws are in town Christmas Eve. How do you make sure you're getting ahead of that risk and those problems while also doing things in a way that works for your budget and your family? We've definitely helped homeowners electrify everything fully. One of the huge benefits is you get to cut off that gas line and save, I think it's, depends on where you are, but it's something like $20+ a month just for the service charge, the right of Excel to provide you with gas, your gas utilities. So that can be a huge ROI savings for many people. But if you're not ready to do everything all at once, then, how do we make it as simple as possible for you to do things over time?
One of the projects I worked on, I think it's like 1988 or something, was the Colorado Home Energy Rating System. And it was astounding to me when I did real estate a couple years back to see that the home energy bills are still not part of the real estate transaction of the lender calculations. That just seems phenomenally short-sighted to me, but I think those things are coming. And I know that there are certain cities and states where it is required, like in the MLS, to list what the actual electric and gas costs are. And I think if those could be considered in your underwriting, then, you could get like a renovation loan and show that, hey, this is an extra $30,000-$40,000, but also I'm going to have basically nothing for this certain bill, or it's going to be drastically reduced. There still is that disconnect in the process, but I think in the coming years, that's going to come to the forefront. And so I really think of this electrifying your home as future proofing, because with different codes and incentives, carbon taxes, whatever the heck's coming, you'll be in a much better place to do that.
Look, I completely agree with that. I think there's two really important components to it. One is, as you said, the difference between an electrified, insulated, weatherized home versus that home that does not have those things. It could be hundreds of dollars, if not thousands of dollars per year of utility bill, different costs. That's a lot of money. And that's a month of mortgage payment for a lot of people. Understanding what is the utility bill of your home before you buy it, I think can be incredibly valuable. The second thing is there are more and more studies showing that electric homes generate higher premiums when it comes to selling the home. The last data we saw was 4 to 7% higher exit value on your home versus a non-electrified, non-comfortable home. So I think there's actual dollars and cents here that are as important, if not more important for many homeowners versus the carbon impact. And getting to that electric home can really be a benefit to your pocketbook.
Along those lines, I saw something that ranked the ROI of different home improvements. Most people are thinking kitchens, bathrooms, but heat pumps were way up there. And, compared to the amount of mental decisions to upgrade, let's say, your bathroom, just turn it over to someone and do the heat pump, and then it actually saves you. So I was happy to see that. That shows that the market does care. One thing that I always try and impress on the real estate community is, something like 65% of people in the US say they are either concerned or alarmed about climate change. And so I think we do a disservice when we omit this topic. So I'm really glad that you guys are out there doing what you're doing, helping people that are interested get from point A to point B and not lost along the way.
Yeah. Thank you. It's rewarding, fun work for sure. We love it.
Just as we're wrapping up, I think you touched on this a little bit, but if somebody is interested in looking at electrifying their home, where would you recommend they get started to get going on this?
Yeah, the best place is by starting with our website, www.elephantenergy.com. We have a number of tools on our website. The most valuable for most people is probably the electrification roadmap. That's a great place to get started, just to understand where are you in electrifying your home and where would you like to get to? And maybe we can provide a little bit of guidance around what are the priorities for your home and what would our advice and suggestions be. From there, we're happy to talk with homeowners, especially in the Colorado and Massachusetts areas who want to electrify, and happy to help them upgrade their homes from there.
Terrific. All right. Thanks for taking time to hang out today and talk about one of my favorite subjects. I really appreciate everything that you guys are doing. And thanks everyone for tuning in. And I'll see you next time on the next episode of Climate Action Homes. So long.
Thanks so much.
Thanks for watching my interview with DR Richardson of Elephant Energy. And if there's something that I can do to help you go solar or help your neighbors, your family go solar, reach out. I help homeowners, families across 30 states, and that list is growing every day. So reach out and let's see if that was something that can work for you, and let's make a positive eco impact together.